What's going on, guys? It's Nate. Today we're going to talk about what you can learn from the world's fastest serve ever. Well, currently, up to this date, as of right now. And who we're talking about is Sam Groth from Australia. He was recorded hitting a serve at 163.4 miles per hour. That's ridiculous, folks. Now, it's a little bit contested because it was at a challenger, whether the radar gun was official or whatever else. John Isner, second, 157.3, I believe. But as of right now, this stands as the world's fastest serve. Now, disclaimer, you're not going to hit a serve 163.4 miles per hour. Neither am I. But there's some things from Sam Groth, his particular service motion, that you can learn that you can start applying to your game that will help with the MPH, all right? Can't make you 6'4", 200 plus, built like a middle linebacker overnight. But let's check out some technique things, some things that I think will help. So first, let's just, I want you to see this vertical. Before we jump in, let's show you this ridiculous propulsion up. All right, I just see this for a minute and this ascent up to this ball and how ridiculous that contact and that upward flight is. I mean, this is a very large man delivering a whole lot of force to the ball. Now let's take a look at a better angle now and start talking about some of the things that we can do to improve our serve. Let's get rid of that right there. All right, here's Sam Groth a little while before. This was a little earlier in his career. Had the onion hairdo going on. So number one, the first thing you can take from Sam Groth's serve is focusing on getting your serve moving from right to left. All right, and so what I'm talking about here is if you watch his racket, you're gonna see it working to the left side, okay? Now, we've talked about this a lot. We've talked about keeping the racket, the palm down, and focusing on keeping this racket, the tip of the racket, pointed sideways, which you can see here. All right, so the racket face here, tip sideways, and then we can also see the racket face is down. Now, why do we want the racket moving right to left? Why do we want to go from here to here? Very simple. It's keeping motion. Things in motion tend to stay in motion. It's building momentum. So by working from this right to left as a righty, from a lefty, left to right, but as it's working over, it's building momentum into the service motion. So here, this is Sam Groth's, what would a lot of people refer to as the trophy position. We like to call it the power position because he's loaded. You can see as I back this up, I'm gonna let this play. There's no stop in the momentum on the serve. So it's just building this perpetual motion. Now, I will say this, if you have trouble, if you feel like you have a hitch, I don't necessarily recommend this because you want to go slow enough so that you can recognize when things are breaking down. So if you have a tendency to flip your wrist over, your toss is crazy, you don't want to necessarily move this fast. But what you can do is you can segment to where you're starting abbreviated, racket here, focus on the toss, and once the ball has left your hand, start working on getting the racket working back this way. You hear a lot of people calling this the salute, knocking the birthday hat off, knocking the cone off. There's a lot of different methods to this, but bringing the racket back this way. Now, does the racket have to come this close to your head? All right, in this case, Sam Groth does bring the racket pretty close over the head. Right, so he would definitely knock that cone off his head, but we see a lot of players keep a lot of distance from the racket in the head, but they're still moving the racket from the right to left to build this momentum. So number one is get the racket moving from the side of your body up to that power position. All right, so number two, let's talk about number two. And number two, I want to talk about this insane knee bend and load. All right, so we've talked about in other videos how the product of the knee bend is more about coiling, right? We don't want to actively toss, bend the knees, and then go up to the serve. This should all happen at once. And what you're seeing is as Groth is coiling his hips back, the knees then become a byproduct of that coil. Now, what happens a lot of times on the serve is people think about sitting down, and maybe you've heard this instruction that you're sitting down in a chair, and they start trying to sit in a chair as if it was behind them. So they're loaded in this position. what Groth does, and this is where if you're loading forward, loading down and then looking to get forward, remember we go down and then out, you really want to think about the chair being out in front. So here, this is where we want to see the chair. So here you can see that he's loaded out into it. It's as if the chair's slightly in front of you and you're loading down into it. All right, and this is just creating this massive amount of torque. You can see here, the hips coiled, legs loaded, and this uncoiling, this corkscrewing, if you will, just delivers an absolute ton of power. All right, so the second tip here is if you're thinking about bending your knees, don't. Think about coiling and then sitting out in a chair that is out more into the court, not straight down. All right, and then number 3, I'll give you 2.5 because this has to be said. 2.5, tip 2.5, is getting your chest up to the ball. All right, so what I want you to see is Sam Groth's eyes fixed on the ball, but notice how his upper body is elevating up to the ball. It stays constant. He's working up to the ball. Here we see this straight line, chest up to the ball. We tell the kids all the time to take off like you're Superman, right? Like today's Superman, he doesn't like run and jump. Takes a step forward and propulses up to the air. And that's what we see Mr. Groth doing here. So the final tip is about internal shoulder rotation. Practice finishing with the racket tip down. We can see this here. All right, and what this does is this internal shoulder rotation, you're allowing, as you're coming through, when you're making contact, internal shoulder rotation happens naturally through pronation, but you're keeping the elbow up. A lot of times players swing and the elbow collapses. So the hand is actually leading the stroke and the elbow drops. You're gonna find a lot more power if you focus on keeping the elbow up. So as you make contact, allow it to pronate and come through as we see Groth here, but keep the elbow up in this position. As we can see right there, the elbow stays up as the racket goes down due to this internal shoulder rotation. All right, and from there, you can't keep the arm there. I don't want you to stop there. Pete Sampras had a superhuman rotator cuff. You could get away with holding it a little bit longer, but you'll end up into some shoulder injuries, right? We want to help that rotator cuff. So allow that racket to come through. All right, so really remember, you're getting up and out. If I go back here again, Sam Groth is not going straight up. Right? It's as if somebody put a hurdle in front of him, like if he was jumping over the chair, right? He's going up and out into the court, as we see Mr. Groth doing here, just delivering this massive, massive serve. Now, you don't have to hit 163.4 to be a good server. I mean, who can? It's hard to get to 100 miles per hour. But if you can apply a couple of these principles and get a few more MPHs on a relatively consistent and well-targeted serve, you're gonna see your winning percentages go way up. Guys, thanks for watching today. Be sure to check out the comments. There we've left you a link to check out the platform for absolutely free. And be sure to check out the serve course that we've connected. And if you enjoyed today's video, find any value, hit that like button, hit that subscribe if you never want to miss a Play Your Court video, and we'll see you next time.